Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to fling your favorite fishing rod around. And here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance covers your boat and your belongings. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to high-five someone. But not while you're holding your fishing rod. That's a prized possession. So hold on tight with both hands and keep it covered through boat insurance. Get more with Geico.
You got problems that you ought to be concerned with. Moolah! You don't know how you're supposed to earn it, or what to do with it, or how to keep it. You're a freak with a dark, shameful secret. But you're not the only one. Get your hidden financial fears with a blast of sun. Now your healing has begun. It's Bad with Money with Gabe S. Dunn.
Hello and welcome to Bad with Money, a show about finances and feelings where we don't talk down to you. I'm your host, Gabe S. Dunn, and with me today, we have Raffi Grinberg. Can you tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Raffi. I used to teach a course called Adulting 101 at Boston College, all the life skills that I wish I had learned in school, but never did. I also run an organization that focuses on bringing people together for constructive disagreements, and have written a math textbook in the past as well.
Oh, yeah. I noticed the math of it all, which kind of I feel ties into a lot of this. So I was like looking at your book, which I have a friend who's very analytical. And he and I often have this conversation. I felt like I was talking to him when I was reading the book, which is that I create narratives a lot and I'll be like, well, this is what I'm like. And this is how things go for me. And then he's very intent on having me eliminate emotion from it and kind of look at things in a very neutral, non-patterned way, which is extremely hard for me, I think, as a writer. And so do you think that is part of your drive to do this or ability to do this or the tone of what you're trying to do, which is like, these are value neutral decisions. These are just decisions you have to make, and they're not inherently morally good or bad.
There's one specific skill that I think can be helpful for people to learn, that you could call it stoicism, you could call it essentially cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the ability to recognize when your feelings are driving your thoughts and intercept that process. And so if you do something like CBT through a course of therapy, they will teach you the skill. I think you can also learn it from a book and from practice and from teachers otherwise. And so I think it's just a generally helpful skill for people in the population to have. I think sometimes it can get misinterpreted as like, oh, your feelings don't matter. You should never listen to them. I don't think that's true. Your feelings can give you very helpful like hints about things that your conscious mind may not recognize. However, if you always just go with your feelings, obviously your life would be a disaster. Whenever you get angry, you'd punch someone and so forth. So we all do this correctly to some extent. I think people can often take it like one step further.
Can you talk a bit about the beginning of the book of sort of writing things down and treating them like what you want to do in terms of making a plan and treating them the way that you think Raffi, think is a productive way to treat them?
Yeah, I think the main insight here is that most people are living their lives on autopilot that has been programmed by someone else. You go about your day and you can reflect back on it at the end of the day, at the end of the month, and be like, I don't feel like I made my own decisions. I'm kind of living the life that I've defaulted into. I have the job I've defaulted into, the relationship I've defaulted into. And sometimes those are the right ones for you, but sometimes they're not. And that can often be because those defaults come from things that your parents told you when you were young, that your teachers told you, that your peers thought were like cool, or that you heard on the radio, all these subconscious things coming at you, and they program that autopilot. And so the first key adult skill that I try to teach, that I taught in my course and in the book is like how to deconstruct that a little bit and realize, where are these defaults coming from? Can I reprogram my autopilot to live a life that's more by my own design instead of someone else's design?
It's so that you're like explaining it in like 3 sentences. It's so hard. It's so hard to do. I've been working, we had someone on the show, Darius Fox, to talk about stoicism, and that really piqued my interest. And I'm so driven by emotion that it's like so hard to do that part of it, to sit down and even I think that the way that politics is working in our country is like keeping you on fight or flight so that you don't sit down and do this. and you don't sit down and imagine a different life for yourself or a different world for yourself. And there's a lot of stuff. I mean, even speaking as a trans person, I know every step of the way, I was like, well, I couldn't possibly do this. Well, I couldn't possibly do this. And I think like there's something to, as you get older, having the time and the motivation to break all of this down, which is terrifying.
It's certainly hard. And there's another word for all of it, which is having a quarter life crisis. I mean, I had my own for sure. And I just think there's two ways to approach a crisis, right? One is you kind of like head on fire, or you get depressed, or just like everything is coming at you faster to handle. The other is like take control of it and use it to your advantage. So again, not saying that's easy, but I think I've seen a lot of young people be able to do this successfully, of being like, I'm feeling that quarter life crisis coming on. Like, why am I in this job or this school? Why am I in this relationship? Like, what is it that I even want out of life? That's scary. And it's an opportunity.
Yeah, it's an opportunity because you can look at the decisions or look at what you want to do with your future and try, and this is my whole thing, try to eliminate narratives from it. In the book, there was a line that was like, oh, I'm not good at tennis. And then reframing to be like, well, I'm not good at tennis yet. I also really related to the idea of wanting to be naturally good at things. And I'm like kind of in a place where I'm like kind of resentful of the honors programs that I was in as a child. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think it cultivates this kind of thing that I was very much a victim to also, called the achievement mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So especially if you grow up and you're in one of these like gifted and talented programs, you're like in the honors classes at school, you start to see yourself the way that I think those other people see you, which is like you're naturally talented. And so the achievement mindset comes about where you're like, I need to achieve things to continue proving to people that I have this natural talent. And as soon as I'm facing setbacks or rejections, or I don't get back into the honors class, or don't get admitted to the college I wanted, whatever, it actually just proves to everyone that I never belonged in that in the first place and I don't have the talent. And I think it's a very simplistic way to see the world of like, do you have natural talent? Do you not? Right? Like, are you an honors student? Are you not? I mean, there's a million shades of gray. And I think the most important one is that you can improve your abilities over time.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds really obvious, but I think we often forget this. Using the tennis example, you'd say, I played tennis once, it was terrible, I was no good. That's probably true for 99% of people who start playing, but some even very good players can improve over time. And so you could say, I didn't get into the honors program yet. I didn't, get the job that I wanted yet. There's lots of opportunity to improve. And you're never trying to prove to somebody or someone else that you have a certain level of talent or that like you're capable of a certain thing. All you're trying to do is get the things you want out of your own life.
So we're kind of the same age. And the word adulting, and I worked at BuzzFeed, so I do take some ownership of millennial culture. I am sorry. And I will pay for my crimes. But like, there was this kind of hotbed of adulting and kind of this mockery of millennials as unable to do basic things and needing to call it something cutesy. And I remember when I did a Bad with Money book that came out in 2019. And I remember I was deeply fearful of it coming across as like, hey guys, time to learn adulting, LOL. Do you think that this millennial generation is like uniquely in need of that? Or what happened that we're like needing to do this and call it this and be like, this is how you pay a bill? Like, what happened?
I love this question. I guess a lot to unpack there. I will start by saying I definitely relate. The title of my course was Adulting 101. That's not what we call the book, because adulting has all these other connotations, a lot of what you described, which I think a lot of people see as like infantilizing.
Yeah.
You don't need a book to tell you how to like do your laundry. You can figure it out. You don't need your book to tell you.
Obviously we do.
I think it's a myth. I think it's a myth that like millennials are uniquely helpless, or they have this learned helplessness, or that they need to be infantilized because it like appeals to them. It appeals to you sometimes. Sometimes it's nice and comforting to have this thing of like, oh, I'm a hot mess too. You're a hot mess too. Like we can relate. It makes you feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for the most part, people just want to learn new things. They want to learn valuable life skills. And I think there's no need to treat them like babies in order to do that.
Yeah, it's like just is occurring to me now. But like How to Win Friends and Influence People came out in like the 30s. That you could see that as an adulting book.
Yeah. And I love that book. I actually hate the title and I love the book. And the title also feels a little infantilizing. It's like, you don't know how to make friends. Like most people can figure out how to make friends, but the book is teaching way more deep and valuable skills. So I guess you could look back in history and be like, oh, the 1930s generation, they were so dumb. They didn't even know how to make friends. They needed this book. Like, I don't think that's really true.
Yeah. I was looking for a day job. As you guys know from listening to this show, making money consistently is really important, and it's really scary when it's not happening. And so I was looking for a job, and I was looking all over. I was going to places. I was trying to do that old school thing of maybe you just leave a resume at the smoothie shop. I don't know. But I found my job so easily using Indeed. And I actually recommended Indeed to other people to use when they come in and they say, oh, how can I work here? I say, I actually found the job on Indeed. So go look at Indeed, because that is literally how I found my job and applied and got hired. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it matched me to the right job. It showed me exactly the types of jobs I was looking for. I was able to parse through. I was able to see the locations. I was able to see the requirements. I was able to apply. I don't know how I would have done it without Indeed, truly. And it obviously allowed this business to find the right people, aka me. With Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? In the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There is no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/badwithmoney. Just go to Indeed.com/badwithmoney right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/badwithmoney. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. You guys know that I take testosterone and that causes your hair to thin, and my hair is thinning. And I want it to thin to a certain degree, but I don't need it to thin as much as it may end up thinning. So what can I do about that? And as you guys know, I have known about Nutrafol for a while, and I have been taking it. They were kind enough to send me some samples like a few weeks ago, and I have seen decreased shedding. Like, my hair sheds so much in the shower, and that always freaked me out, made me feel really self-conscious, like just would always think, is this too much hair? And after taking Nutrafol, I have noticed decreased shedding. This year, there is nothing holding you back from loving your hair again. Hair is so much more than what you see on the surface. It's a reflection of what's happening inside, such as my testosterone. Let Nutrafol target the key root causes of your thinning hair and help you grow stronger, healthier strands from within. Hair thinning is very common, okay? And it's very frustrating that it's kind of a new thing that's going on for me as I transition. And I need all the help I can get, especially because the shedding is so freaky. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. I cannot wait to get to the 3-month mark if it's already helping now. Physician formulated with 100% drug-free ingredients, Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting key root causes of thinning, okay? So they are stress, hormones, aging, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism, through whole body health. Building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription required. Automated deliveries and free shipping keep you on track. Plus, with a Nutrafol subscription, you can save up to 20%. You'll have access to free naturopathic doctor consults, and a Headspace meditation membership is included. While many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol Men Hair Growth Supplement for 6 months, and 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol Women Hair Growth Supplements for 6 months. Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code BWM. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code BWM. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code BWM.
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
What does it mean, adulting? Like, what have you seen in terms of the people that are in your class?
Well, the way that I like to define it, I think is a more helpful definition, is adulting means taking responsibility for your own long-term happiness. So when you're a child, your parents, for the most part, are responsible for your long-term happiness, and they will force you to make certain decisions that are in your best interest, even if you don't like them in the moment, right? So they'll make you eat your vegetables so you can grow. They'll make you go to school, even if you don't feel like it, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There comes a point in your life where you know your own, what's best for you in the long term more than your parents and more than anyone else around you. And that is typically during the transition to adulthood. And so it takes a little bit of realization there, but it's like, wait, I know myself now better than my parents do. I know what will fulfill me in the long term better than my parents. And when I say parents, I also include teachers, peers, friends, all that. And that's when you have to realize I cannot default to what these other people want me to do. That actually will not be the best thing for me long term. What will be the best thing for me long term is, to circle back to the beginning, if I decide for myself what I want out of life and pursue that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I speak about this a lot, but I think in terms of generationally, there is this divide where, you know, you're teaching this course at Boston College. I think it's a particular type of millennial, let's say class-wise, that has reached this like, oh, I need to learn these things. Whereas, you know, there are other people who grew up in a different way that do know how to do all of this because they had to learn at the age of 8 years old. Or, you know, people who came to this country and they're teaching their parents how to fill out a FAFSA or like, you know, are the language translators for their parents. And so I think that builds a resentment to how the hell did you get to Boston College and you don't understand taxes? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think what you said is definitely true. And there are people who are thrust into circumstances where they're forced to, quote unquote, grow up quickly, right? If you have to help your parents do something, if you have a parent who struggles with a real problem and you essentially take care of them as a child, like we all know people like that. And those are really tough circumstances. I do think that there's a distinction between someone who has to do something by necessity versus someone who's like learned the skills to set them up for the most success possible. And so to give one very concrete example, you could say being in a relationship, right? You could argue, okay, my friend has had a boyfriend for 3 years. Like she knows how to be in a relationship. Not necessarily, right? Like she's doing it, she's done it. Doesn't mean she's built relationship skills that you could learn without even being in a relationship. Of course, at some point, experience is necessary to do basically anything. But I think what I've spent my whole career trying to doing is like distill, like, what are these key skills that if everyone learns, they'll just be set up for more happiness in life, and then try to teach those.
Well, what do you think the beginning, like, what does the beginning of that look like?
The beginning of where those skills like start?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I try to cover 4 areas, right? We've touched on a few of them. So like the mental skills of like stoicism, resilience, facing rejection, the financial skills of like how to pay your taxes and invest money and get health insurance, those kinds of things. The relationship skills of how to talk to people, basically, and how to evolve as your parents evolve and things like that. And then the last one about career, basically how to build a career for yourself.
Do you have people that come into the class and they're like, I have a completely different idea of what I want my life to be? And how do you, I imagine you're dealing with a lot of people who want to break free of, I guess I'm asking, do people still want the 9 to 5 picket fence, 2.5 kids? Or is it mostly people who are like, wait, that doesn't appeal to me?
I say the vast majority of people, it doesn't appeal to them because that's the new default, right? So I'd argue for like our parents' generation, maybe in between us and our parents, like that was the default, is everyone just like assumes that leading a good life means having the stable 9 to 5 job, getting married, having 2.5 kids. And at some point, it actually became the opposite. And now that's a little bit countercultural, right? So I'd say most people are actually programmed to be like, I never want to get married, or I don't want to have kids until I'm like 39 years old, or things like that. I don't think that either one of these is right or wrong. They're right and wrong for different people. And so the problem is if you grew up in like the wrong generation where what you were programmed is not like what's actually best for you, then you could be a victim of all of that. And the only way is to figure out like, what was I programmed? What do I actually want? And those two things should be totally orthogonal. Like it doesn't matter if most people think having 2.5 kids is good or bad. It's like, what do you think is right for your life?
I think that goes back to the overachiever mindset of people telling you this is what you're good at, this is what you need to do. And all of your, like for me, all of my validation came from being, exceptional. And so it's hard to then go back and be like, and I often felt in my mind that was not correct. Like, not that I'm not exceptional, but I was sort of like, a lot of people who deserve good things don't get those things. A lot of it's not a narrative of, well, you worked really hard and you're a good person, so you're going to get the internship. And it's hard to be like, that's not how that works. Plenty of people who deserve things, or plenty of people who are very talented, don't ever work in that job. And how do you create or unpack the idea of, do I actually want this, or do I think this makes me worthy of life?
The first thing you said, I think, shows like you probably had a lot of maturity early on to distance yourself from the narrative that was being created about you being exceptional.
Yes and no, because I'm often told that just means I'm a pessimist.
It's possible. I guess what I'm like trying to seize on that nugget there is like a lot of people build their identities around what they've been told they are. Mm-hmm. So if you hear enough times like you are talented, you will build your identity around being a talented person. If you hear something like you're very friendly, like you'll build your identity around that. And it can be productive in certain ways because it can encourage you to sort of exhibit even more of this positive quality you already have. Mm. But it can also be detrimental in other ways where it's like, if you no longer have that part of identity because you get some piece of criticism and someone says like, you're not that smart or you're not that friendly, then your whole worldview kind of like collapses, right? And so I think a big part of it is to build an identity out of like the solid, concrete things that you know about yourself that the world has shown you, rather than just like the narratives that you hear swirling about you.
I feel like it is like capitalistic and political to be like, well, we need the workforce. So we need people to not sit down and think about what they want.
I don't think the two things have to be mutually exclusive. So I think it's very hard to go through a quarter life crisis while you also have other demands, such as being a student, having a job, taking care of family, whatever it is you have to do. But for better or for worse, that is life. Like you will always have to do work of some kind. And this is just an additional piece of work that is not necessarily related to getting good grades or making an income. It's work related to yourself and bettering yourself.
There's no numbers. There's no grades.
There's no tangible thing to achieve. Exactly. So to people like you and me who are like, we want to get the A+, it's not appealing work because you never even know if you succeeded or not.
Right. Or it all comes down to numbers like, okay, my salary or my following or my listenership, or that the numbers dictate if you are good or bad at what you do. Which
some people, I think, want to go to their grave. And that stamp of approval could be the money in their bank account, like you said, the size they're following, how many people show up to their funeral. Other people want to go to their grave having lived a good life, however they define it.
Can you explain what CAR is?
The critical thinking process that I labeled with this nifty algorithm. CAR stands for comprehend, analyze, reframe. So this goes back to what you were saying earlier about like the news and politics and feeling completely inundated. I realized this the other day. It's like there's a new headline every day. It seems to be something like major is happening, in the White House and government. And I personally, I like engaging with politics. I find it interesting. As you can probably tell, I love to debate people. And so I wanted to stay up to date on this. I wanted to have my own opinions on this stuff, but it was just like constant. And I was like, if I become, a servant of the news, I will just be glued to it and constantly have me focused on that. And so it's very similar to this idea of being like programmed, defaulted, right? It's like information comes at you faster than you could possibly process it. If you are watching the news, even if you just like read random stuff online, even if you read your emails, we're like not wired as human beings to consume this amount of information. So what happens is we don't filter all of it. We just unconsciously assimilate it, like assume it's true or assume it's not true if we initially disagree with it. We don't take the time to process it. So that's a process that I suggest people engage in, is first comprehend, like trying to understand, what is this message saying? The message could be a headline. The message could be the lyrics of a Taylor Swift song. Like, what is it actually saying about human nature or telling me about the way I should live my life? Then analyze, basically question, like, do I agree with this? Do I not? Why do I agree? Why do I disagree? And then reframe. If you end up changing your mind about something because of the message, that actually forces you to reframe your entire worldview. I used to think X, now I think Y. That has all kinds of other domino effects. So I'm basically saying go through a quarter life crisis every time you listen to a pop song or read the news, but like a mini version.
You don't got to tell me twice. Yeah. I mean, I think just the tie of what you do or what you've been told you are being what you then have to keep striving for, because if you don't, you're a failure. And the word failure is really like the judgment of other people, and the word failure is really pervasive. And I'm guilty of judging people when I would work so hard and then I would have someone who was in my same field decide to go into another field. I would be like, oh, they couldn't cut it, which is like, who cares? Now, maybe it's being 36. I'm like, who cares about cutting it? So people have to do other things. You can't just be like, this is my whole identity of what I do or what I'm like, and not be open at all to other possibilities.
That's so true. And it's also so hard to actually compare yourself to other people. Like, I would say,
God,
it's not a good thing to do. If you could do it perfectly, by all means do it. But you can never do it perfectly because you don't know what's actually going on beneath the surface in someone's life. This happens all the time with stuff related to money and like budgeting, right? Our default assumptions about how much money we should be spending on like eating out and drinking and like entertainment, things like that, are dictated by what our friends are doing. We're like, well, they can afford it and I have like a similar job. I should be able to afford it too. It's not necessarily true. You don't know if they're getting money for their parents. You don't know if they're going into debt, right? And so a lot of the times, if you're like keeping up with the Joneses around you, you actually fall into all the same financial traps they're falling into because they keep all that stuff bubbled up and you don't find out about it until you also have those same problems.
Not only do I have friends who have been the victims of identity theft, including someone you know very well, my co-host on my other show, Allison Raskin, but I have also been doxxed. I've been harassed. I remember when I was working at BuzzFeed, I had right-wingers trying to figure out where I lived, posting everything about me. Privacy really matters. And it not just matters to me as a public figure, but it should matter to you as a listener, especially because I've had people in my personal life harass me too. Exes, things like that, estranged family members. Do you ever wonder how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see? It's more than you think. Your name, your contact info, your social security number, home address, even information about your family members, all being compiled by data brokers and sold online. Yes, they can find out your address very easily, even old addresses where like other family members might still live. Data brokers make a profit off your data. Your data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, harassment, and unwanted spam calls. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. As a person who exists publicly, especially as someone who shares my opinions online, I am hyper aware of safety and security. And it's easier than ever to find personal information about people online. All of this data is just hanging out on the internet, and it can have actual consequences in the real world. That's why I personally use Delete Me. Delete Me is a subscription service that removes your personal info from hundreds of data brokers. I literally do use Delete Me. Myself, certain friends of mine, we all use Delete Me. I had it recommended to me by a friend of mine who's a sex worker, and she uses it to keep herself safe. I used it to get a bunch of stuff scrubbed off the internet. I promise you it works. It was great. They gave me these personalized updates. Like when I signed up, right, I gave Delete Me the exact information I wanted deleted, and their experts took it from there. Then they sent me these personalized privacy reports showing what info they had found, where they found it, and what they removed, which I loved reading because I was shocked at what they had found. So Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. It's always working for you, constantly monitoring, removing personal information you don't want on the internet. Put simply, it does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal information from data broker websites. I promise you, I use it. Myself and a bunch of sex worker friends, we all use it. They recommended it to me, and that's how you know it works. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting BAD MONEY to 64000. Text BAD MONEY to 64000. That's BAD MONEY, all one word, to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Yeah, it's lifestyle creep. It's the idea that, well, now that I make this amount of money, my friends have boats, so I should have a boat.
And the lifestyle creep is so real with salary too, where it's like you get a raise, you're like, okay, now I can spend more money. But then the problem is you become addicted to having that salary. Because if you wanted to, let's say, take a job that you actually like better, or that you felt had like a better mission or something you actually cared more about, but it has less salary, like I can't imagine going back to living in a studio apartment or, eating on a budget or things like that, because the lifestyle is a little bit addictive. For me personally, money just represents freedom. The more money I have, the more free I am to spend my time on the things that matter to me. And so if I have more savings in my bank account, I have more freedom to like quit my job and pursue something different. It's a little drastic, right? I think that's rarely going to happen in my life, but that feeling of freedom is very important to me. And so I don't want to get addicted to certain lifestyle things. I want them to be very conscious choices. Like, yes, I have children. And I know that that has permanently raised the floor on like what my salary can be to support my family. But it's because I wanted to have children. I want to feel those benefits and benefit them. And it's not this default thing of like, I wake up when I'm 40, I have 2 kids to take care of, and now I'm stuck in my job and I can never leave because I can never get a salary that good again.
Yeah, that's the big fear. And like people say, obviously, time is money. Like money is time. When you're talking about having options or opportunities, that's really what it is. And I think my biggest regret was, and I'm sure this people listening to the show know, is getting money and then kind of letting other people steer what I did with it. And then having this narrative of, oh, well, I used to have all of this money and now I don't again. What does this mean about me? And does it mean that I'll never have it again? It eats up all of your time and then creates this resentment in me about other people. But you're right. I mean, do you think it's worth asking? I mean, people are weird about it, but I've just started being like, how did you do this? And then I get the answer. My parents gave me the money, or I come from money, or whatever, more often than not. Or you get something that you haven't thought of yet. But I think like you're right about comparing yourself and asking people, well, how are you doing this? What is going on?
It's such a helpful question. And it is hard to ask. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the like detriments of the society we live in is like people don't talk about these things openly. Because if they did, you'd just be able to make such better decisions. Like this couple, it seems very similar to me and my wife. Like they live in a house that's much bigger. Like how do they afford that? And so maybe I could just assume like, oh, I should be able to afford it. It means I should, be able to make more money or whatever it is. Or like you said, I found out that they inherited money or they're making some other financial decision like I should be making too. That's actually really smart. And if people talk more openly about things, including salary, I think the world could be a much better place. I was going to ask you, like you said, you previously had more money. Were you happier at that time in your life?
I don't know. I think I have a lot of impulsivity and also like an inability to think long term. I don't know if I was happier, but I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, you should have saved more of that, which is so funny because I would tell other people to do it, or I would get really anxious if like a 19-year-old NBA player signed like $1 million deal. I'd be like, oh my God, I hope he has investments. But like, and I did have that, but I was in a relationship where I got into a relationship where the other person took a lot of my money is what ended up happening. And, people say the thing that will decimate your finances the most is a divorce. And I think that is true. And also what happened to me. And it's funny because my mom is a divorce attorney and she would always be so anti-relationships. Like she would always say to me, like, do not get entangled with someone. Do not, which is crazy for a Jewish mother. But she would be like, divorce is the killer. Like, don't do it. And then I was like, she's so hardened by the world. And then she was right, it turns out. And so I feel like I spent a lot of my money on this relationship that didn't work out. Whereas I'm like, oh, you could have saved that, or you could have spent that elsewhere, like on your career or something. But I just wasn't thinking. It's hard to think when you're in this relationship. And so I wasn't even happy in the relationship. So I don't know why this just kept going.
I appreciate you sharing that. It makes me think of 2 things. So the first one is, right, like in some ways your mother was right. In other ways she was wrong because different situations turn out differently. And I think a lot of people's worldviews are colored by what they see every day. And so a divorce attorney will be like, divorce happens all the time. It's really scary, right? And someone who's like a wedding officiant will be like, marriage is beautiful. Like, you should get married. My wife is a hospice doctor. And so she works with people who are dying every single day. And so that obviously informs her worldview. And she's like, death could happen at any moment. In a lot of ways, she's right. It certainly can. I think we've made a lot of positive changes to our life because of that. In other ways, it can be negative if you go too far to the extreme, where we joke about this. And she's like, all these people die with so many possessions. What is the point of these possessions? Then their relatives just have to get rid of them. So like, I want us to just not have any possessions. Like, well, the possessions will still be useful to me for the next, hopefully 60 years or something. I could use it for 60 years and then get rid of it.
Right. Yeah, taking what works and what doesn't. I think I was happier, but, well, I don't know. I didn't learn, I feel like I didn't learn any lessons. I guess now I have the lessons, but it is like a total shift in what I'm able to do and what I want to do. And I look back and I'm like, I had all this money. And I remember at the time I bought a house with this person. I remember at the time buying the house, I thought, well, all right, if it doesn't work out, we'll just deal with the house. And I didn't really think it through because I was a little bit like, and I think this is a detriment to the overachiever, where I was like, it'll work out. It always works out for me. And the narrative around me from other people is it always works out for Gabe. And I think my parents particularly are very, and I'm going through it now, where it's like, it's all for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. And you're gonna figure it out. And you'll always end up on your feet. And all the stuff that's going on for you now and is bad for you now is going to be such a funny story on Jimmy Fallon one day. And I'm coming into the idea that I'm like, sometimes things just happen. Like, sometimes it's not part of a narrative of you deserve it to work out. It's not part of a narrative of, well, this is all this bad stuff is happening because it's going to be a funny story one day, when it's like, okay, but I'm sure, maybe, but I'm living it now. It's not a funny story now.
Yeah. And there are a lot of mistakes. If I'm hearing you correctly, it's like there are a lot of mistakes you could avoid, right? If you engage in better decision making. And so your parents' attitude can be a really helpful way to approach life. It can be harmful in the sense that it's like, well, if everything's going to work out, I could just do la-di-da, like whatever, and it'll all be fine. Obviously, that's not a good way to live either. I do think my, part of my worldview is not necessarily that like everything's for a purpose or everything works out in the end, but more like everything can serve a purpose. And so you can look back on things that mistakes you made or decisions you would make differently now and be like, I can make my life better because I went through those things. Like, you have experiences that very few people have, and that will be able to make you make better decisions than other people are making for the rest of your life.
Oh, I didn't assume that you thought that it meant I'm not getting everything will work out naturally from you. That's not sort of what you're preaching here. I did not think that.
So true.
Yeah. Did you naturally know about this, or did you go and research everything? And what are most of the students or most of the people that you're aiming your book at not doing or not seeing?
I was shocked when I learned that I had to save money for retirement.
Yeah. / invest money for retirement.
I will get to that for sure. That's the other half of the truth that I think that most people just don't tell you, which is if you don't save enough money for retirement, you will not be able to afford to retire. Most people cannot live on Social Security alone, and we don't even know what's going to happen to Social Security in the future. So you have to save money. The other side is you don't have to save as much as you think you might, because you can invest the money, and money to invest grows over time. So it begs two questions, like how much should I be saving for retirement, and what is investing and how do I do it? And those are things I try to teach.
Yeah, it's hard, I think, to think about the future when you're in your 20s, needing to retire,
are complicated. And in some ways, in your 20s, you're like, I'm not even thinking about the future. I'm just trying to get by today or have a good time today. In other ways, people are very future oriented when you show them and help them understand how these things work. So I think this whole narrative of people being like, oh, I don't care about retirement. It's a little bit of a narrative that feels like a consumerist culture, things like that. So if you actually sit someone down and say, I can show you how much money you will need to live on when you're retired, and I can show you how much you'll have to put away today, and I can help you make the right investment decisions to do it. Like most people are like, oh, that makes total sense. Like, I'll totally do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a very small percent of people that are like totally all about instant gratification, just don't care at all about the future. I think it's a lot of people don't know about the future, don't understand the future. If they learn certain things, they will be able to make better decisions.
Yeah, they don't know or understand. I mean, a good chunk of the book is like, here is what a form looks like. Here is what compound interest means. Here, I mean, a chapter is called one of them is like pay taxes. Like the concept of what to do with money is just, I mean, we've talked a lot on this show about a certain subset of human being. One, either going to college and signing a bunch of loans and not really knowing, and then being like, well, in the future, I'm going to be successful, so it'll be fine. Or people who are like, well, I've never had money. I've never been able to pay for anything. So fuck it.
And I think there's a third category, which I saw among my wife's classmates all the time, medical school. They're like, I'm already so far into debt, so screw it, right? It's like, I'm paying for this exactly super expensive medical education. Hopefully, I'll graduate and become a doctor. Meantime, like, who cares if I, spend money on eating out or drinking out or whatever it is? In fact, it's the opposite. Like that money they're spending now is more expensive because of the interest they're paying on their debt.
Yeah. I just think I've had like my thing now is I'm so annoyed because when I'm budgeting, which I know I've talked to so many people on the show about it, and it's like people call budgeting sort of the crash diet, where it's like when I'm budgeting, I'm like so resentful that I have to think about this all the time, that I'm like going to the store and I have to think about it, or that I'm like, it takes up so much mental space when you're doing it from a place of fear when you're starting. And also it's like hard sometimes to talk to people in your circle because I have a few people in my life that I love very much that have money, come from families with money, things like that. And I'll say, oh, I can't. I actually don't think I can go. And then their reaction, it sucks. Like they're sort of confused and their reaction is like seems to be annoyance or like, well, I don't know. I think I'm trying to get across to this audience that I understand that the idea of saying, oh, just budget or just do these things, like life is so hard. If I don't have pad thai in the budget, I'm like, okay, but I want to die. So what the benefits of the pad thai coming to my house versus me wanting to die. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like hard to talk. I think I'm in a weird place where it's like hard to talk to people.
I think you're already doing something which is great, which is deciding for yourself what's worth spending the money on. Like you might very well conclude, yes, pad thai is overpriced and it's very expensive to have it delivered and I could just be less lazy and walk there, but it's still worth it to me. Like it's worth it to me. It makes me happy. And so I will pay for it. What that means is I will not be able to afford this trip with my friends, and that's worth it to me. I think that's a really mature, conscious decision of like, I have evaluated two options and decided the one that's more valuable to me, instead of just being like, oh, my friends are going on the trip, I should do it too. And then you don't have enough money for pad thai and then you want to die.
I know, but then it's like, well, you're not hanging out with your friends. Like you're missing stuff. And it's
always a trade-off, right? It's not good, right? Like you're always losing something, but all of life is trade-offs. And I actually think, I don't want to be like too like happy-go-lucky, but trade-offs are an amazing thing because it means you're making decisions, and that's like living. Like deciding to forego things and pursue other things is what makes life. If everyone could just do everything, there'd be no point because we'd all be exactly the same.
Yeah, but I'm also like, when I am on my deathbed, am I going to be like, wow, I'm so glad that I saved $30 and didn't go to Vegas with my friends? Like human relationships are of value. Achievement is of value. But I guess that's just my values. But I'm like, oh, so life is so short and I'm just going to be at my job. Like, but I guess that's information. My friend, and possibly you, would say, I think he would love you, is saying that information is telling me information. So what do I then do with that information?
you're engaging with this difficult trade-off of like, what's more valuable to me, the trip or the pad thai? Or I could do both and not afford this other thing or go into debt. Like, all of these are valid options. And I don't think anyone, including myself, could possibly say you should do this, you shouldn't do that. What we can say is like, you should go through that exercise of thinking it through. If you don't make the decision, then you'll be living someone else's life, not your own. I also think, per your point about the deathbed, like people over-optimize for this whole deathbed thing. Like when you're on your deathbed, hopefully there'll be a relatively short thing. You'll be on your deathbed and then you will be dead. It doesn't even matter what you thought when you're on your deathbed.
Can you say more about that?
So my wife and I put up these different signs in our home. We got them made on Etsy of different mottos that we have. And one of these mottos is live each day like it's your first. Because I think too many people say live each day like it's your last, and it doesn't make sense to me. If it was my last day today, like I get what they're going for, right? Like appreciate things and so forth. But if it was my last day, I'd spend all my time like telling my wife like the passwords to our bank account and like saying goodbye to people and like doing phone calls and like crying. I don't want to do that every single day, right? What I do want to do is try to seize that same energy of appreciating things. So living each day like it's your first is like with fresh eyes. Like you can go outside and be like, the sun is amazing. Like the sun makes me warm and provides light. And like this breeze just feels so good. It's kind of how children are. And I've like relearned that through seeing my children start to grow up. They appreciate and they love so many things. So that's my like new motto that I try to remember.
Wow. Okay. Did you guys come up with that?
Our other signs are drama-free life. Some of our extended family can be dramatic. And so be like, we just don't want to have drama. And the third sign is more imp, less hobgoblin. That comes from, do you know Ralph Waldo Emerson? Foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds.
Yes, I do.
So that quote follows a longer passage where he's basically saying a lot of what we talked about, where it's like, we feel this drive to act the way others expect us to act. And sometimes it's just totally not rational and totally unconscious. Just like, we don't want to confuse people. Like people expect me to do this. I'm just going to keep doing it because like it's so weird if I stop doing that and confuse people, as opposed to being impish, like the term for just being like a little bit impulsive and different and spontaneous. I think it's especially important in a relationship. This is basically Esther Perel's like whole advice distilled into this one nugget of like, it's okay to change and to do things that your partner doesn't expect. And in fact, that makes for a more fruitful relationship. And so instead of being in this path of like, my partner expects me to be this way, I have to keep being that way. It's like, it's okay to surprise them. In fact, it'd be a good thing to surprise them. We're going to learn new things about each other, like change our lives a little bit. But we need that reminder literally on the sign in our bathroom of like, be a little bit more impish every day.
Yeah. He's talking about foolish consistency. He's talking about just what you're talking about, which is autopilot. Yeah. We're changing. I'm not a writer. There's certain friends of mine that I'm like happy for them but I also was surprised when I shouldn't be, where they like work in PR and then suddenly they're like, I'm going back to school to write a novel. And I was like, oh, like interesting. Or like, and I was like, right, because life is so long and people change all the time. And I had this idea that for myself, oh, I'm a writer. And it's like, yeah, you are. And also just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it. And also like I am a writer, but there's other things that happen in your life that people have jobs and like you can switch or think, oh, I like this other thing or whatever it is with like sort of a value neutral approach to it.
I was going to say, there's a great quote about labeling, right? We said like a writer, right? What does that mean to you? I really like your approach. Like I will be a writer no matter what. I can have whatever job. I'm still a writer. It's still what I like to do or what I'm good at. There's the quote that I love about labeling comes from David Burns, who wrote a popular book about cognitive behavioral therapy. He'd say, you would never call yourself a breather just because you're constantly breathing.
Whoa. Yeah. It's so funny. It's so much cognitive behavioral therapy, huh? Well, okay. We'll get into the other stuff in the little Friday episode. So for now, this has been one of our episodes that is therapy, unfortunately, or fortunately. I mean, what are you frustrated by? Like, what do you wish you could impart to everybody or to at least the people that are interested in your book or in the course, let's say?
Right now, I feel like I'm on a mission. My mission is to empower people with these skills that I think can make their lives much better. And I think it's a travesty that most people were never taught these skills. But that's in the past. The present is you can learn them. You can help other people learn them too. And so for me, as you said, I do consider myself a writer, but it's not my full-time job. This is purely for the mission of it. Like, I'm trying to sell more books, not because I'm trying to make a name for myself as an author or whatever. It's just like, I think if people read this, it will hopefully improve their lives. And so I'm hopeful that other people join me in that mission.
And it's interesting. It's irrelevant what you want to do, and more so reframing how you think about it in a way that isn't like happy-go-lucky empowerment, or like self-help is very emotions-based in the sense of like, you got this, girl, or like, and I always appreciate coming at stuff, and I'm growing more and more to appreciate perhaps what is stoicism, which is coming at stuff with like you just have to not judge yourself as you're going through this, because a lot of people are going through it. And if you're like, well, I'm a person who always knows what they want and I'm competent, that can actually be bad, it turns out. Spoiler, the 6th grade honors classes system really had a detrimental lasting impact.
And they were probably teaching you all this highfalutin math instead of teaching you compound interest.
Oh my God. Yeah, exactly. And that's where we can end, because that's true. Thank you so much. Where can people find you and your book?
My website is raffigrinberg.com, my name.com, and the book is going to be on Amazon soon.
And at an indie bookstore, perhaps.
Oh, hopefully all over. Gift shops, indie bookstores, and maybe in your bathroom, just like mine.
Thank you. Bad with Money with Gabriel S. Dunn is a production of Noted Bisexual, produced by Melisa D. Monts and Diamond MPrint Productions. Edited by Diane Kang, post-production sound by Coco Llorens, production assistance by Melanie D. Watson, and music by Mike Kaplan, Zach Sherwin, and Jack Dolgen, sung by Sam Barbera. Thank you, love you, bye!
All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to paint their door a vibrant shade of blue. Others have the need to decorate their bathroom with fish, anchors, and other nautical items. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.